guys, my name is Witchy Cupcake and welcome to the Cupcake Coven. Today I'm going to tell you guys a story about why I was away from this channel for a couple of months. And while I don't want to have too much of a strict schedule on here because this is more just like somewhere where I can have fun, I did want to post a bit more regularly than this. And the reason why I was away from the channel is because I was really sick. I almost died. Yet again. Before we begin this video, I did want to put a little disclaimer in here that I am not a medical or health professional. I'm just here to share my own story. Always consult your physician before doing anything that anyone says on the internet. So for about a month, I would say, I had various different symptoms. Now, I've actually dealt with a chronic illness, which one day I'll tell you guys in the future, for my whole adult life. So over a decade. This is why when I wasn't feeling very well, I was just explaining it away because sometimes I just don't feel well, you know? But this time it was a little bit different. Some of the symptoms that I was having were things that I had never experienced before. And the problem was that they were kind of on and off. I was sick and then I would feel a little bit better and then I would feel sick again. So I was like, oh, maybe it was something I ate. Maybe I didn't get enough sleep. Maybe it's this other chronic illness. So on and so forth. So I was trying to explain away these symptoms. And as you guys know, right now in the world, the pandemic is happening. So I didn't want to just go to the doctor for something that I didn't think was too intense. For this period of about a month, as I said, I started getting different kinds of symptoms, and of course, toward the end, they were getting a little bit worse. So, I had talked to my partner, I had talked to my mom, and they encouraged me to finally go to the doctor when I hadn't basically been able to eat almost anything for like 3 days. So I was like, okay, I need to go to the doctor, maybe get an IV so they can replenish some nutrients, some fluids. I was feeling pretty dehydrated, things like that. That was, I believe, on May 14th of this year, 2020. So my partner and I got in the car and we went to the Instacare. Now, if you don't know what an Instacare is, it's basically a clinic or small medical center where you can go to see a doctor without having to schedule an appointment in advance. Kind of a walk-in sort of clinic for just general illnesses. They're not specialists, but if you're just feeling unwell, you can go there and they can either prescribe you some medication or take like some labs to see if something is abnormally off with you, or they can refer you to a specialist if they don't think it's anything too urgent. So, my partner and I got in the car, we drove to the Instacare. And when we got there, they had these kind of like tents where they were testing for COVID-19. We couldn't just walk into the Instacare as one would do when there's not a worldwide pandemic. So we went through the tent and they told me to go wait in the parking lot that was nearby until one of the nurses from inside of the building would call me so I could enter. And they weren't taking any other visitors aside from the patients that needed to be seen. So I waited in the car for maybe like 5 minutes and the nurse calls me and says, okay, you can like come up to the building and we'll check you out. Now at this point, I was already feeling really weak, so I could only walk slowly and my breathing was a little bit heavy. And that's, you know, one of the reasons also that they tested me for COVID. So I went into the office. Everyone's wearing masks and special suits and things like that. And she just asks me some questions. And it seemed like at first they weren't taking me seriously because I was just saying so many things, both to her and later to the doctor that came in. Fortunately, they kind of checked me and they told me to do some labs. So they sent me in to get a urine sample. And then I went back into the office and waited for the results. And when the doctor came back in, it was really funny because he did not enter the room again. He actually just poked his head in through the door and said,
"You need to go to the emergency room right now."
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he said,
"Your blood sugar is incredibly high, and all of your electrolytes are out of whack."
He literally used those words, "out of whack," which I thought was so funny. And I was like, okay, so like, what do I do? Do I wait for an ambulance or should we just drive there? Because I was still well enough that I could, walk to the car and stuff, but I didn't know if they needed to put me on like oxygen or who knows. So he said,
"No, actually, you can just drive there."
And it was about a 15-20 minute drive maybe. It's pretty close, but not that close, you know what I mean? I got back in the car, told my partner what the doctor had said, and in fact the doctor said that he was going to be calling the emergency room in advance to tell them that I would be arriving. So we headed over there. We drove there, and I was admitted into the ER. Now in the ER, usually when you're feeling pretty weak, and at this point I was getting more and more weak, they bring a wheelchair to wheel you in, so they avoid risks of you falling down, fainting. And at first my partner went in with me because he was helping me out with like the card information for the insurance and things like that. But as soon as they were like, okay, we have all of her information, he had to leave because they are not admitting visitors. I did wait a little bit. It wasn't too long of a wait. Like, I've waited in the emergency room previously for like hours. I'm talking like 6 hours or things like that. This time, my perception of time wasn't the best, but I feel like I waited anywhere from like 5 minutes to half an hour. So it wasn't a very long time. But they took me in and they put me into one of the initial little emergency rooms. And basically they hooked me up to a bunch of IVs and cables. They did an EKG, which is I think the one that tests your heart. All in all, they were just trying to stabilize me. They finally took me to the ICU, which stands for Intensive Care Unit. So it means you're still in a pretty critical condition, but you're not like bleeding out or anything. You're kind of stable enough to go to this other place rather than be in the emergency room. That literally took like several hours. So my poor partner was at home and he didn't know what was going on with me. Eventually, doctors come by, they talk to me, and essentially what happened is that I was in diabetic ketoacidosis. Growing up, I had heard about obviously diabetes and how insulin and glucagon works and how it regulates your blood sugars. But the thing is, I've always had really good health regarding my blood sugar levels. Even though I'm overweight, I've never had issues with that in my whole life. And because of the other chronic illness I have, I always have to go to the doctor at least like every 3 months. So I'm always being monitored for those things. So I would have never thought I was having a blood sugar problem. And sadly, they looked at me and said,
"With these levels, you have diabetes."
I was at the same time shook because that was completely unexpected, and also kind of like, okay, like, I guess that's that. My blood sugar levels were so high that I was in a critical state. I have the help of my trusty book here that they gave me from the doctor that explains what this is, okay? So it says here, hyperglycemia or high blood glucose can be a dangerous problem. In the short term, it can cause serious symptoms and may even become life-threatening. For example, one sign of dangerously high blood glucose is ketones in your urine. Ketones are acids your body makes when it burns fat instead of glucose for energy. They can build up to toxic levels in your body. This condition is called ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis may occur when hyperglycemia is severe. Call your healthcare provider if you have moderate to large amounts of ketones in your urine. Get emergency care if you can't reach your healthcare provider, or if you have large amounts of ketones in your urine. So I think I read somewhere that you can actually get ketone testing kits over the counter at the drugstore, but I'm not sure about that, so don't quote me. And just so you can understand how bad I was doing, the normal levels of blood sugar are from 70 to 140. I was not at 200, not at 300, not at 400, but at my highest reading I was at 457. That is severe, and as it said here, can be life-threatening. I ended up staying in hospital for 3 days, and I was so exhausted. I felt terrible. Thankfully, because of the care of the hospital, I was able to recover from the ketoacidosis, but I would have to learn a bunch about diabetes because I have never had anyone with diabetes in my family. Actually, I had one coworker at my last job that had diabetes, but even though I knew that she always carried around snacks and things like that, I didn't really have too much time or delve into it with her because I didn't know if she would be comfortable sharing about that. But I had no idea how it actually worked, except for things that I've seen in the media or again in school. When I was in hospital, I actually had a diabetes educator come by to my room and talk to me about it, and that's the person who gave me this awesome book. The only bad side to that was because I couldn't have anyone from my family in the room with me, I wasn't able to retain all of the information because I was so exhausted and I was still kind of, not in the best condition. But it was funny because after the educator came by, the doctor later asked me,
"So, do you know what can happen if you don't treat or control your diabetes?"
And I was like, well, according to what they told me, basically, your organs fail and you die. And he was like,
Yep.
Shortly after being released from the hospital, I was actually able to bring my sugar levels down to normal, and now I am within range. I'm being very, very careful. There's one thing that I'm good at is following rules. So if someone says, this is how you calculate stuff, this is what you're gonna do, I'm doing that. Diabetes, while it's a very manageable disease, if you are not careful with what you eat or anything like that, it can have some really serious consequences. And of course, you're not going to be perfect, but try your best to follow the guidelines. And if you do, I've been told that you can have a pretty normal life. So I hope that this video was helpful to you guys in any way. Obviously, I don't want this to be a health channel or a diabetes channel. This is more just my life in general. But since this is something massive in my life now and it's all brand new to me, I thought I would kind of share this journey of me learning about diabetes and learning how to deal with it. And also, I've already discovered some really good tips and things that will hopefully help you out there as well, whether it's with just education and awareness, or if you yourself also have diabetes, and maybe some of those tips will help. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and you can also subscribe to the channel for more content like this in the future. And if you would like to interact with me live, you can check me out on Twitch. All the links will be in the description down below. Let me know if there's any other specific subjects that you would like to know about my diabetes journey. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!